everyone. Welcome to another Apex Office Hours. It's March 16th here in the US, and I'm doing a little bit of a flair thing with it being St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, so I hope you like my hat. I love this hat. In any case, my name is Jason Haynes. I'm a Senior Principal Product Manager on the Apex team, and today we have a special host that's going to talk about what's new for Oracle Apex on OCI and Autonomous Database. But first, our next office hours are going to be Apex office hours for JPAC. So that's on March 24th. And then we'll have another Apex office hours for Romania or in Romanian. And that'll be on April 4th. So those links there, if you go to apex.oracle.com/go/JPAC, you'll be able to quickly and easily sign up for that. And the same thing with Apex-Romanian. But you're also able to just go to apex.oracle.com/office hours as a shortcut, and you'll be able to subscribe to all of those office hours reminders. So we have more conferences coming up this year. Coming up here shortly is going to be Apex World 2023 in the Netherlands, and then the Apex Alpe Adria on April 21st. And then on May 3rd through 4th will be Apex Connect over there. And I think that's a German conference, if I'm not mistaken. I won't be going. But I will be going to the Kscope conference here in Colorado this year, where we're going to have the Apex boot camp for the first time, which is going to be separate from the sessions. It's going to be 2 days of learning how to build apps in Apex, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But that's going to be at the same time as Kscope is running with all the sessions and all the other things going on that week. So it's going to be a great time. And for more information, you see the links there, kscope23.odtug.com. If you're able to sign up for that and participate, that'd be great to see you there. There's going to be a number of us from the Apex team there in person, so we hope to see you. Just so you know, the Apex Forums is live. It is apex.oracle.com/forum. Apex is only one category on the whole forums site, but this is an Apex app. It's a PWA, and it works great on mobile. So if you haven't had a chance to visit the new Apex Forum, and it's a discussion category, you should take a look. It's really great, and it works magically because it's an Apex app. I'm actually more involved in it now because I find it a lot easier to use, especially on my mobile device. So now it's time to turn it over to Todd. He's going to discuss what's new for Oracle Apex on OCI and Autonomous Database. So after Todd is completed with his presentation, we'll switch back to some Q&A. Over to you, Todd. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that introduction, Jason. And let me just make sure we've got the sharing all set up. Okay. Hopefully that is coming through.
Yep. Looks great. Proceed.
Okay, so for today's edition of Office Hours, as Jason mentioned, we're going to be focusing on Apex running in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI for short. And we're going to focus in on a specific database service running in OCI. It's called Autonomous Database, if you haven't heard of it before, or ADB for short. So those are the key acronyms, OCI and ADB. And this service, we think, is a really great service for running Apex. Because it's autonomous, it takes a whole bunch of other things off the table and allows you to really focus on your Apex application development. So we do have kind of a point of view on that. We think most of the time, or for many use cases, from a strict Apex development perspective, Autonomous Database is probably the best service to be running your low-code apps on. So I'm going to focus on that. And I'm going to give you an update on all kinds of things we've done for Apex on Autonomous in the last 9 months or so. Having presented on ADB plus Apex at Office Hours a couple of times last year, for this session today, I will assume some familiarity with ADB and with Apex running on ADB. On the other hand, if terms like OCI and ADB are brand new to you, then I believe you still will find this session useful. You'll probably be able to pick up much of what I'm talking about as we go along. So please do stick around, whatever is your background, and I believe this session will be time well spent for you. All right, so it has been a little while since I last presented a cloud update at Office Hours. So I'm going to brief you on several important things that have transpired in approximately the last 9 months. This is not a comprehensive list of everything that we've done for Apex on ADB in the last 9 months. It's more of a grab bag of some important topics that customers inquired about and that we went and delivered. So I'm going to start with this enhanced Apex upgrade process on Autonomous Database. Apex is upgraded twice per year on Autonomous Database autonomously, and we'll describe that in a bit more detail. Then I'm going to jump into using email from your applications. You may have applications that need to send email. I'll demonstrate how to configure that and how to do it, and talk a little bit about some news there that, if you haven't heard, I think you'll be pleased with. It's pertaining to an always free allocation of email in Oracle Cloud. I'm going to go into how HTTP timeouts work for Apex apps and really any web tool that's running on your Autonomous Database, how the timeouts work, and some updates to those timeouts that we recently made. And I'll provide a bit more detail on that. And then I'll wrap up with a couple miscellaneous enhancements we did and a discussion of the roadmap. And I think we will have time for some question and answer at the end. There'll be multiple demonstrations here as well. I'll be doing several demos. Okay, let's dive right into our first topic, and that's this enhanced upgrade process for Apex on Autonomous Database. As you know, we do 2 major releases of Apex per year, and we make it available for download so it can be installed anywhere, including on-premises environments, database environments that are just running in a virtual machine, installed anywhere that Oracle Database runs. We also take that twice per year release, major release, and we upgrade it in Autonomous Database. So our Autonomous Database users get it, and they get it in a relatively autonomous fashion, so they don't have to spend a lot of time actually executing the upgrade themselves. Last year, we did 2 major releases as normal. It was calendar year 2022, so they were prefixed with 22. We did 22.1 and 22.2. We typically do one in the late spring in North America, and then another one in the late autumn in North America. And that certainly is our intent for calendar year 2023 as well. You'll probably see something prefixed with 23 in the late spring and another release prefixed with 23 in the late autumn. That is our intent. That's typically how we do things, and we don't have any big plans to change that process. And then when we release, we upgrade it in Autonomous Database. The link shown right here is a good link to bookmark and remember if you're using Apex on Autonomous Database. This is where we broadcast what's happened recently and what's coming soon. You'll see updates appear on this page when an upgrade is coming. And you'll see, after the upgrade's done, you'll see more information about what's in the upgrade and what new things are there that you can take advantage of in your low-code applications. Okay, so in upgrades that we did on Autonomous prior to 22.2, so prior to the upgrade we did last autumn, we had this capability that you could opt into where when the upgrade becomes available on Autonomous, you can opt to not be upgraded on day 1. You can opt to instead get a month and a half of deferral time. And this was something that you would opt into in Apex Administration Services. And many customers were doing this. They would get the extra month and a half because that gives you the ability to plan and coordinate your upgrade activities in advance. And then during that 45-day window, click a button to execute the upgrade at a specific day and time of your choosing. That was a nice capability that many customers were using. And during that window, you had time to go test your applications on the new Apex release in a separate environment before taking that upgrade in your main environment. And there's various ways you can do that. You can take the downloadable installer on day 1, go install the new release in a separate environment, test, export your apps, test your apps there. Or in the Autonomous Database world, there's a much easier way to do this. It has a very nice cloning capability that will clone the whole instance. Because Apex is an in-database technology, it clones not only the database and your application data, but also your Apex application definitions. Everything gets cloned when you clone an ADB. And then you can allow that clone to take the new release, test your apps there, and then go back and take the new Apex release, the upgrade, in your main autonomous database when you're good and ready. So we had customers who were doing that, who were cloning, testing, and then going back to their main and taking it during that deferral period. And I should just parenthetically, I want to point out here, many Apex apps, Apex is built on very durable technologies like SQL and PL/SQL, and many Apex apps run very nicely without a single alteration across many years worth of Apex releases. We have applications that have been running untouched for more than a decade across many releases, and that is indeed common. But as Apex expands into more enterprise use cases where you've got apps that are touching more and more of the Apex functionality, you've got third-party plugins, all kinds of things going on. In this world, we do recommend you take the time to test your apps against the new release. And there's a couple easy ways to do that. And if you're using Autonomous Database, it's even easier, just using the cloning. A couple more subtle points here. If your Autonomous Database is in a stopped state when that upgrade window begins, we'll go ahead and apply the upgrade whenever you start your Autonomous Database next. It will automatically be applied when you start your Autonomous Database. And after that day one, after that initial date of availability, when your window starts, any brand new Autonomous Database instances that you provision, they'll automatically be on the new release. So a couple important but subtle points there. Okay, so starting with the 22. Upgrade in November of 2022, we enhanced this process a bit and added a couple new things to it. Much of it is the same, much of it is similar to how it worked before, but there's three main things we did that we think enhanced it. The first one is we gave everyone the 45-day upgrade window by default, so you don't have to opt into it anymore. Everyone gets a month and a half of time, gets a month and a half time window, and there's no special setting that you have to click on to make that happen. Just everyone gets that now. The second thing is that this 45-day period, this is there for free and paid instances of Autonomous Database. As you may know, we have some very nice, smaller, always free shapes of Autonomous Database that you can just use for what you want to for an unlimited time and never be billed. They do have some limitations on the storage and the compute you get, but they're free and they're great for development environments, QA environments, things like that. So this upgrade process applied to the free and the paid. And going forward, if you're a paid customer, we give you a way to actually get even more time. So the paying Autonomous Database instances can actually get up to a full quarter, 3 months or 90 days of time. And that is a setting, which I'll show you in a minute. We'll demonstrate that in a moment here. But if you're running a paid Autonomous Database instance, you can click a button and go from the 45-day default all the way up to 90 days to get a full quarter of time to do your testing and plan your upgrade. We also released a new API. This is a PL/SQL API. It's through the Apex Instance Admin package that allows you to check for availability of an upgrade and also initiate the upgrade or execute the upgrade at a day and time of your choosing. So that's nice. And I should point out as well that when the upgrade becomes available, we notify you through various means. You'll see notifications in the user experience, in the UI, both in Apex Administration Services and Apex Developer Workshop in your workspace. You'll see that in your workspace too. We send email, and there's a OCI notification event. If you're using the OCI notification service and you're a paying customer, you can register for events that will automatically notify you of the availability of an upgrade as well. So we notify you about availability by various means, but you can also call this PL/SQL API to check too. You can actually script that check. All right, so that's a quick one-slide overview of the new upgrade process. Now I'm going to show you it. And this, let's see. Okay, this is our first demo step. This will show you both the 45-day default and upgrading to 90 days. So it's a useful little demo to do here. And I'm going to do this screenshot style. It's a little quicker, a little more convenient. I don't have to switch screen shares and things like that in Zoom. So I'm going to show you this screenshot style. We start with our familiar Apex Workspace sign-in page. And I'm going to go down to the very bottom under the sign-in button and click Administration Services. As you may know, this is our interface for the admin type user who's administering the Apex instance. In many teams, the admin user and the developer are the same person. But in larger teams, those may in fact be distinct roles. So we're logging into administration services to do settings on the instance as an admin type of user here. And I'm going to log in using my database admin password. This is the DBA. This is the admin account that you specified when you provisioned the Autonomous Database instance. And that's a key password that you got to remember. So I'm going to log in as admin into Apex Administration Services. And here's the Apex Administration Services homepage. Notice on the bottom right, you see a little box that mentions something about available updates. And you see a message indicating that currently the system is up to date. And as I mentioned, by default, you'll have 45 days to test your apps before it's automatically upgraded to any new Apex release that comes along. And it indicates that if you need more time, you can click on this gear icon to increase the time window. So let's do that. I'm going to actually click on that gear icon and I'll see a dialog show up here. And I just want to point out, this is pretty specific to Apex on Autonomous Database, right? This is a value add that you get when you're running Apex on Autonomous. And here I'm going to change from my default 45 days up to 90 days. I'll click on Apply Changes. And I should point out here as well, this is intended to be kind of like a one-time setting. You can certainly change it during the year if you want, but most of the time you'll have organizational processes that dictate, whether you want a lot of time or a little time, whether you want 45 days or 90 days. And those processes don't change too often. So you make your election and then you can just let it run for years at a time. Or if you really, something changes in your process and you can reduce the time or you need more time, vice versa, you can go in and change this, but it's kind of intended to be a one-time setting. Okay, so I'll apply changes here, and then at the bottom you see the box is updated, and now it indicates that the next time a major Apex release rolls around, I'll actually get 90 days. Okay, that's the end of that demo segment. Now I want you to imagine that some time passes, and we've rolled around to one of these twice per year major Apex releases where we're not only making it available for download, we're going to upgrade it on Autonomous as well. And you've received notifications. You've received an email. Maybe you've noticed something in the UI. Maybe you've registered for the OCI notification event. You received a notification there. And this, when you get the notification, what this indicates is that the next release has become available in your region, in your data center. Or in OCI language, we call that an OCI data region. I'm based in the United States, in the Western United States, so I'm running my Autonomous Database on our data center in the Phoenix, Arizona area, but you may be elsewhere in the world running in another region. And when you get the notification, what that indicates is that the upgrade is now available in your region. And you can, that's the signal that your window has started, your time window has started, whether it's 45 days or 90 days. And one way you'll see that signal here is right in the UI, in our user experience. Under available updates, notice it says, so this is going back to the upgrade we did last fall, where it told me Apex 22.2 was available. It was available to take as an upgrade. And it also, based on my setting, which I had changed to 90 days, it gave me a target date for when that window ends. So 90 days later. This was in early November. Add 90 days, it's able to compute the target date, and it says that if I don't do anything, it will be upgraded automatically on Sunday, February 5th in 2023. So it gives you a target date there. All right, so I'm going to log out of Apex Administration Services, and this time log into Apex Developer Workspace as a developer. So now I'm developer role, signing in with a developer account to my workspace where I'm building and deploying apps. And we also do some notifications for the developers. You can see a little alert here so that your developers are aware of what's going on. They know a new Apex release is available and that this instance will be upgraded at this target date about 90 days from now. So this gives your developers a heads up as well. Okay, that's pretty much it for that segment. Now you've finished testing and verifying apps. We're going to fast forward again. Assume that you went off and you tested a bit in a separate environment. Maybe you cloned your autonomous database or you downloaded and installed elsewhere, but you've done some testing and you're ready to take that upgrade at this point. You're ready to click a button that says upgrade now and take it. You're comfortable with the new release. It's all good, and you want to actually execute the upgrade at some point during your time window. So back on the Apex Administration Services screen, you can see that Upgrade Now button. I'll click on that, and I get a little dialogue here. The dialogue is going to make me double confirm, right? This is an important operation, so we double confirm it. You click the button again, and that will actually start your upgrade. You can see a little banner at the top, and in the bottom right, a little spinner indicating that this new Apex release is being applied right now and that the upgrade has commenced. So pretty simple to go initiate the upgrade, pretty straightforward process. And back on the Apex Developer Workspace homepage, so now I'm switching context again, I'm Apex Developer. We show a similar message to the developers. So they have a heads up. They know that this upgrade process has commenced and is ongoing. You can see not only is there a little alert in light brown, but also at the top of the screen next to the search box, there's some squiggly spinner arrows. I can click on that and see a more detailed message. So there's a little icon that gets displayed at the top too. Before the upgrade commences, it's displayed as a wrench. And you click on that and it shows you a dialog describing that an upgrade is available. And then once the upgrade commences, you can click on that and see the upgrade status, that it's ongoing. Okay, I should also point out here that when the upgrade is executing on an autonomous database instance, that typically takes about an hour to finish. So about an hour, twice per year to do this. And Apex actually remains fully usable most of that period. At the end of the period, for a period of minutes, it does enter into a read-only mode. So developers need to be aware of that. That's why we're alerting developers, right? So they have a heads up and they know to save their changes if they have changes pending. So for a few minutes at the end of that hour, it goes into read-only mode. And then at the very, very end, in the message here, we say 3 minutes, but it could be a little less, it could be a little more. It's typically like 1 to 5 minutes at the very, very end of that period. Apex does become unavailable while the upgrade is being finalized at the end. So around 3 minutes of no availability just twice per year. And in exchange for that, we keep Apex fully patched and fully upgraded with the current release for you. And we give you some flexibility around that with these time windows where you can take it at a day and time of your choice and have a little time to do some testing. So not a bad trade-off. I think pretty good trade-off. 3 or so minutes of downtime in exchange for this being kept up to date for you autonomously. And as you know, in each new release we do is packed with all kinds of innovations and enhancements for low-code developers. And our community is typically very eager to see the new release, see what new low-code innovations are there, and take advantage of them in their apps. So it's quite handy to stay relatively current, and you can do that easily in an autonomous environment. Okay, so wrapping up this section, I just wanted to point you to a blog post we did all about this. This was published last November, right before the 22.2 upgrade. Got the link on the slide to the blog post. And then I took a little snippet from the blog post. I took this snippet strategically because this is the piece that describes the API. And you can just see it displayed here using the Apex Instance Admin package. There's a way you can make that call and check to see if an upgrade is available, whether your time window has started or not in your region. And then there's another call where you can actually, once it's available, you can actually invoke the upgrade, commence the upgrade, and start that 1 hour process of upgrading your Apex app. I do want to point out, you obviously need to have privilege to run this package, to run Apex Instance Admin. You need to be some kind of administrative user, have execute privilege on the package, or have the correct role, which I believe is called Apex Administrator role. And then you can do this from script too. Okay, so that's it for our enhanced upgrade process for Apex on Autonomous Database. Now, next, I want to talk about email. Many low-code Apex applications running everywhere, on autonomous database or any environment, it's common for these apps to have a need to send out email. And there are various reasons for this. I just put one example here in the bullet. You might have multi-staged tasks that need human approvals as the task moves from step to step, and a person needs to click on something, so you need to notify them. You notify them typically via email. I helped with an Apex app once where we were actually implementing our own sign-in screen, and we were sending out emails as part of verifying users' identity. But there's many examples of when you might need to send emails from an Apex app, and there are things that you as a low-code developer may want to do. And then there's system-generated emails and other emails that get sent. They get pulled into your app just by virtue of some low-code functionality that you're leveraging. So, some prepackaged functionality in Apex that will send auto-generated emails. So lots of examples of this. And in Apex, there's a generic interface that you call into to send an email message. It's called Apex Mail. So this is your PL SQL interface that's used for this, but it's just kind of a generic interface, right? It actually doesn't do the sending. It needs to be wired up to a sender behind the scenes that will do the sending. So it's the generic interface you call, but then it's wired up to an SMTP server, an email sender of some kind on the back end, and it can be wired up to any number of senders. In OCI, we do have a very nice email delivery service. It provides a convenient and low-cost email delivery right there in your cloud tenancy that works well as the Apex Mail sender. Okay, so this bullet, this is the rub. Okay, this is kind of the problem statement. OCI tenancies can be in a couple different states. It's common when you first sign up for an OCI tenancy and get your free tenancy to be awarded some kind of trial program, some kind of trial period where you get some free credits that you can spend on paid services for some period of time. So that's the first important state that your tenancy can be in. Then when your trial ends, which can end either because you hit the date when the trial ends or it ended because you spent all your credits. When the trial ends, you can elect to upgrade your tenancy to paying status and buy some credits that you can spend on paid services. Or you can just let your tenancy go into this exclusively always free state where you don't have a payment method, you don't have credits, but you still have the ability to use this vast array of always free services that OCI provides. And OCI provides a very nice always free autonomous database shape that you can just continue using. Well, it turns out that a lot of developers in the Apex community, they're just using these free tenancies. It's quite common to be using a tenancy that's in an exclusively always free state, developing on autonomous database, developing low-code Apex apps on an autonomous database that is the always free shape with an always free tenancy. And it makes sense. It's a development environment. Most people, you don't want to pay too much for the dev environment. You pay for production environments, other environments, but for the dev environment, it makes sense. This is a common scenario in the Apex community. Well, the problem was that our own email delivery service didn't have an always free allocation. So you could happily develop your Apex app on your free database, but when it came time to actually send some email, then you actually had to do something to your tenancy. You had to upgrade your tenancy to paying status, enter a payment method, purchase some cloud credits, all for the right to spend what is probably some very small amount of credits on sending some small amount of email from a dev environment, right? So it was a bit of a hassle for folks. And we got some feedback from Apex developers. We got feedback from the Apex community that having to jump this paywall just for the right to send a couple of emails from a dev instance was inconvenient. And we heard you. We heard that feedback, and we went out and worked with the OCI email delivery team here at Oracle on an always free allocation. And if you haven't heard, I'm happy to announce that there is now an always free allocation of OCI email delivery. It was released late in the year last year, in December of 2022. And this makes it easier to just quickly get up and running, sending email using Apex Mail and email delivery from an always free type of environment, an always free tenancy, which is common for developers. And there's no tenancy changes required. You don't have to upgrade your tenancy to do this. You can remain in that exclusively always free state and still send a couple of emails. So very nice enhancement we think will make life better and more convenient for our developers. Okay, I'm going to go a little deeper now. I want to explain the terms of the free allocation. This was your first tip-off. If you're watching the Oracle Cloud price list, as I do, I'm a cloud PM here at Oracle, so maybe I'm a little geeky. I geek out looking at the price list every week. This is the first tip-off that this was finally released and that this was made available. As you see on the price list, and I put the link there, a new entry under email delivery that says first 3,000 emails, and then there's no price listed. It's price equals 0. So there's a new entry on the price list that says your first 3,000 emails per month are free. Now, cracking that open a little bit, here's the detailed terms. Your first 3,000 emails per month are free, and there's a daily limit too. And to be precise, it's per rolling 24-hour period. So you can send 100 emails for free per rolling 24-hour period up to 3,000 per month. And additional email, if you exceed these limitations, additional emails, they are charged. So you'll be charged credits if you're in a trial period or your tenancy is in paying state. If you exceed this, you'll be charged credits. Or if you're an exclusively always free state, additional emails beyond this will be blocked. And one other note for new people who've signed up for OCI recently and you're in a trial period, that's a temporary period to introduce you to cloud, give you some free credits. There are some limitations while you're still in the trial period in terms of having a slightly lower email send rate and a lower daily maximum. So even if you're spending credits, there's still some lower limits while you're in trial period. But once you're in full paying status, those trial limitations go away and you get a much higher email send rate and higher maximums. And there's all kinds of details explaining this in the published documentation. I put the link to the email delivery documentation at the bottom there as well. So that's a bit more about the new free allocation. Now, Mark and others suggested this would be a good office hours for me to actually demonstrate sending an email, configuring email, wiring it up, and actually sending one. So I'm going to go on a little digression here, and we're actually going to show wiring up Apex Mail to OCI email delivery and sending an email. I think this will take about 10 minutes. And it's a pretty simple process. It's about 5 steps. It starts with creating a SMTP credential in your OCI tenancy. This is kind of a one-time operation. You create a credential and it produces a randomly generated password and username. You have to remember that. It only shows it to you once. So you remember it, you put it in whatever password manager you're using, secure password manager you're using, and then you'll use that credential in the configuration later. And obviously, to work at the tenancy level with things like SMTP credentials, you need to be a tenancy admin type of user. You need to have access rights in your cloud tenancy to work with credentials like this. When I demo this, I'm going to sign in as the Uber tenancy admin, which probably many people do in dev environments. So you'll have the rights to do all of this stuff. But in a enterprise using production tenancy with production services, you may need to slice and dice and dish out the privileges to do different things here using OCI IAM. But I'm going to demo this just as a big, powerful tenancy admin, which is common for developer environments. Okay, then you go over to the step 2, you go over to the email delivery service. And the minimal requirement is to create at least one approved sender in the email delivery service. Again, kind of a one-time operation. You need to have permissions to actually administer email delivery. And I'm going to show you the minimum. Email delivery is capable of much, much more. It not only manages approved senders, it does if you've ever used an email delivery system before, it does all the common things and more. So defining suppression lists, do not send lists, handling email bounce backs and complaints, logging what's occurred. You can configure security features like SPF and DKIM. all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on that. I'm going to kind of show you the minimal configuration, but just know email delivery is a very robust and powerful service that does things you may have seen in other email delivery services and more. Okay, so step 3, before I leave the email delivery service, I'm going to check the email delivery endpoint, the actual address to the specific SMTP server, which I'll be using, which will be sending my email for me, and the port. And then I'm going to zip over to the Apex instance as an Apex administrator and enter that information. Enter the SMTP credential, the email delivery endpoint and port. That's the process of configuring my instance so that when a developer goes and uses Apex Mail, it will work. And then lastly, as a developer, this time, I'm going to go into my Apex developer workspace and actually invoke the Apex Mail package to send an email. So that's my end-to-end flow here. Let's jump into it. We'll start with creating the SMTP credential in your OCI tenancy. And again, I'm going to demo this with screenshots. It's a little quicker, a little easier. I'm demoing this on my personal OCI tenancy, so I do have to rub some things out. You'll see some things rubbed out in these screenshots, but it's I took a lot of screenshots, so it's pretty close to live. All right, so this is the sign in to OCI console to go administer and manage my cloud tenancy. So this is pretty much everyone who's using OCI. This is what you use. This is how you sign in and start doing things interactively. There are, of course, APIs to automate a lot of this as well, but I'm going to show you the user experience because that's what a lot of folks are using. So I'm signing into my tenancy to see the main cloud console. This is the main homepage that everyone sees when they sign into their tenancy. And parenthetically, notice we got the prime real estate for Apex on the cloud homepage. Right in the middle there, you see a quick start for deploy a low-code app on autonomous database using Apex. This is a little 2 or 3 step wizard. It's the quickest, easiest way to create an autonomous database instance with Apex and get you up and running the fastest. So it's a nice little wizard there. It will create an instance of our specialized Apex service, which is a specialized version of autonomous transaction processing. But I think you can also switch it to do a full version of autonomous transaction processing if you like. And you can also choose free or paid. So nice little wizard to get you up and running quickly there. All right, so to start this email configuration process, I'm going to click on the top right. There's a little person icon. And if I drop that down, I'll see a menu item for my identity. This is who I'm signed in as, me@example.com. Now, if I click on that, I can see my identity details. If I scroll down a little bit on that page, I'll see some related resources on the left. So I'm going to click on SMTP credentials, and now I can create a couple of credentials for doing email underneath that identity, associated with that identity. If I generate SMTP credentials, I'll see a little dialog here to give it a description. And then as it's generating, this is where it creates a randomly generated strong password, and it creates a username. This is the piece I absolutely have to remember. This is what I'll need later as I'm doing my config in Apex, and it's only ever shown to you once. You don't show it again. So remember the generated username and password for this credential. You can see that it's been created. I see it in the credentials list at the bottom now. There's a credential called demo. So I've done this piece. I've basically completed step 1 at this point. So next, I'm going to jump into the OCI email delivery service, create an approved sender, and take note of the SMTP server endpoint that's going to be sending my mail. And to do that, I don't know if you noticed previously, at the top left of the page, there was a little hamburger icon to drop down a menu. We call this the mega menu because this is your index into all things OCI. And OCI already is an expansive estate full of helpful and useful cloud services, all kinds of cloud services. So this is your index into all of them. We try to categorize them for you. We make it searchable. If you're looking for email delivery, that's under developer services, application integration, and you can see it there highlighted in white, kind of in the middle of the screen. So I'm going to click on email delivery to zip me over to the email delivery pages. This is your email delivery dashboard. Shows you, I haven't sent any emails yet, so it's not populated with a lot of useful information yet, but this is where you can see things related to deliverability and your reputation. You can see, what was suppressed, what was bounced, what emails were accepted, all kinds of useful information in this dashboard. On the left, I'm going to zip over to approved senders. And this is where I create the minimum, at least one approved sender. I'll click on create approved sender, and I'm going to define an approved sender called demo@example.com. So this will appear as the from address when I ultimately start sending emails from my Apex app. This is what I'm going to use. This is the from address. So from an OCI email delivery standpoint, I want it to be approved because I'm actually going to be sending emails with this as the from address. Now I've got an approved sender. You can see it in the list there, and I'm pretty much done with that step. If I click over on the left on configuration, I'm running in the Phoenix data region here in the Western United States. So I'll be using this SMTP server. You can see the endpoint address there, smtp.email US OCI oraclecloud.com. I need to make note of that endpoint and the port. There are ways if you are delivering email to an audience that is concentrated in a particular geography. So, for example, say I'm in Japan and I want to deliver emails to primarily Japanese receiver inboxes that are based in Japan. I can send from an endpoint that's closer by, and then the emails will be delivered faster, right? So there are ways to configure things like that in email delivery. I'm going to just do it from my home region using the endpoint in my region, and they get there pretty quick. You'll see it's a couple minutes at most. Typically, they get there pretty quick, but you can optimize that for audiences around the globe by sending from different origin locations. Okay, so this is my endpoint. I make note of that. I make note of the port. And now I'm pretty much done with that step. I've configured email delivery with what it needs. And I'm going to go to my Apex instance and actually give that information to my Apex instance. So it knows how to send email when the time comes. So to do that, I'm going to go back to the mega menu, click on Oracle Database and Autonomous Database, and I'll see my listing of current Autonomous Database instances. I've got 4 of them in this tenancy. They all have Apex. You can see under workload type, I've got 2 Autonomous Databases that are the transaction processing flavor of Autonomous Database. They have Apex. And then I've got 2 instances that are the specialized Apex service flavor of Autonomous Database, right? So this is a variant of ATP, which turns a couple of things off in exchange for a lower price, right? So I've got 2 of those instances too, but they all have Apex. They're all exposing Apex, and I maybe have low-code apps on any one of these. For demo purposes, I'm going to drill into an Apex service instance. It's the one at the top of the list, Sandbox2 or SBX2. And just click on that link to drill into it and see details about this instance. It's available, it's up and running. I see all kinds of helpful information about the instance. And I'm going to show you configuring the mail settings using the API first. I think in the Apex developer community, this is probably what will be more widely used. It's a little quicker. So I'll show you it using the API first, and then I'll show you it using the UI, using the user experience second. And to run Apex Instance Admin as a big administrator type of role, I'm going to use SQL Developer Web to do that. SQL Developer Web is our nice web-based IDE for authoring and executing SQL statements and PL SQL scripts. It's under that button that says Database Actions. Database Actions gives you a whole world of helpful kind of browser-based tools that allow you to do things in the database. Not only SQL Developer Web, but tools for managing database users, loading data, all kinds of useful things under Database Actions. All right, so I'm going to try and get to SQL Developer Web and run a simple script as an admin. I start by clicking Database Actions. I'll sign in to Database Actions again as my primary DBA account that was created when I provisioned this instance. And then I see the Database Actions Launchpad. And here you can see some of those useful tools. There's also a link to Apex here. So if you want to jump into Apex, we have SQL Developer Web at the top left. We actually have a web or browser-based version of SQL Developer Data Modeler too, a graphical way to do your ERDs. Just all kinds of helpful stuff here. If you haven't experimented with this, go take a look. So I'm going to drill into SQL Developer Web at the top left, and here you see my SQL Developer Web interface. Now I'm going to run a short script to do the Apex email configuration API style. As an administrator, I'm going to run the Apex instance admin package and give it a couple settings. The first one is the host address. So that's that SMTP server that we were looking at before. This is where I specify that. Then I set the SMTP username and password. And those are the SMTP credentials that we did in the very first step. And this is a real instance, so I've rubbed out the actual password and the full username, but you'll have something that looks like this after you generate your credential. All right, so I set my address. This is kind of the minimal config. My address, my username, my password. I'll run that script, and at the bottom you can see it completed successfully. Now I'm going to copy paste one last little snippet of script here. This is the validate email config, and it does a simple validation just to make sure there's nothing obviously wrong with that config. I'll run that to validate, and it looks like that completed successfully. So now I've done the Apex Mail configuration for the Apex instance using the PL SQL interface. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Moving on to the next step, I'm going to show you the same thing UI style in the Apex Admin Services user experience. So back on my Autonomous Database Details page, just click on the Tools tab, and I'll launch Apex from there. There's various places that you can launch Apex from. This happened to already be open, so I'm going to launch Apex from there, fewest mouse clicks. I'm going to, again, click below the sign in button to get to Apex Administration Services, sign in to Admin Services as an administrator. This is as the DBA. And I see this, again, my home screen for Apex Admin Services where I can do my instance level settings. I'll click on Manage Instance. Under Manage Instance, I'm going to click on Instance Settings. And then under the Email tab, I see all the key email settings here. And you can see that because I already did it API style, they're already set. You can see the SMTP host address is set to my email delivery endpoint. The port is set. My SMTP credential username is set. I've rubbed some of that out. The password is not shown for obvious reasons, but the password has been set as well. And then at the top, let me describe these two fields as well. So there's two mandatory fields at the top, the Apex instance URL and the Apex images URL. These are preset for you in Autonomous Database. We already know what the link back to Apex running on Autonomous Database is, because we're already in that environment. So we set this for you, so you have the appropriate links there. You don't need to worry about having to set those manually, but this is the link back to Apex. So in system-generated emails, that email content may contain links going back to Apex or drawing an image from the Apex Images repository in those system-generated emails. So that's preset for you. Okay, and that's pretty much it. That's doing the same configuration step using the UI. I'm going to sign out of Apex Administration Services now and sign in to Apex Workspace as a developer. Go to SQL Workshop. Now you could do and go to SQL Commands. You could do a snippet of script like this numerous places in your application. I'm going to just run it in SQL Workshop. It's the simplest, easiest place to run it, but you may have a snippet of script like this embedded into your application logic that actually sends an email. I'm going to send from demo@example.com. That's my approved sender. I'm going to send to a generic inbox on the web. This is one of many temporary email services available on the web. This one I'm using provides an email domain called rollnot.com. And I'm just using a temporary email service because those let in pretty much any email. They don't have a lot of spam filtering or any such thing like that. So I'm going to send to that. I'm going to send with a simple subject and a simple body. I click send, or I click execute. At the bottom, you'll see that script executed successfully. And then within a couple minutes, that will be delivered. And I'll go back to my temporary email inbox on the web. And I can see at the bottom that just a couple minutes later, that email has arrived at my inbox. It's from sender demoexample.com, our approved sender, with the right subject. And if I open that up, it has the right content. So that is my end-to-end demo of configuring and running email from Apex. And all those, that sample email I sent, that was completely free. And I didn't have to do anything to change my tenancy. I was able to send that free. So if you have an exclusively always free tenancy, you can do that now without having to make tenancy changes. Here's a couple useful links all about Apex plus email. This is the blog announcement from me announcing that we now have a free allocation. There's a more comprehensive tutorial from Chaitanya from a couple years ago. There's some online doc. I put a link to the Apex doc showing you how to configure email in Apex Administration Services. And then in the ADB doc, there's a very nice tutorial. I put the link at the very bottom here that shows you how to configure this stuff API style. All right, that's pretty much it for email. Now our last major topic here is about HTTP timeouts. I'm going to spend a few minutes on this just to describe some updates that were recently made. So when you're running Apex on Autonomous Database, the HTTP timeout is configured by Oracle. It's not something you can change. It's essentially hard-coded by Oracle. When you're running it on premises, you have a bit more flexibility and you can tweak these things yourself. But in the interest of making this service autonomous, this is one of the things we hard-coded. And in the past, the HTTP timeout was 2 minutes for ADB configured with a private IP address. And what we found was, let me back up a step. We want to make migrating from on-premises to a cloud service like ADB as simple and easy as possible. Like, so if you're doing a lift and shift, if you're moving from on-premise to cloud, we want to make that experience simple for you, as easy as we possibly can. And what we found was there were some customers who were migrating to cloud who had a longer timeout configured. We had a couple customers that were uploading a large CSV file into Apex, for example, and they had configured for a longer timeout because they knew they were going to be doing that. And then when they moved to Apex on ADB, that 2 minutes was just a bit too short for them. So we experienced this a couple times. And in December, we actually went back and we increased that timeout from 2 minutes to 5 minutes. So we more than doubled the duration. We also subsequently went back to ADB, this was in February, ADB with a public IP address, and we also synchronized that timeout to 5 minutes. And this is important. It not only impacts Apex, but other web tools that are running on Autonomous Database. Any web tool now is a 5-minute timeout, regardless of your ADB configuration. So that's a fairly recent change. And our objective was mainly to facilitate migrations and give people who are running ADB with a private endpoint, which is common for production databases, keeping it within a VCN, having a private IP address. We wanted to give them a bit more time to facilitate their migration. Now, it's also common in this world, if you're running ADB in a private subnet with a private endpoint, to expose it elsewhere by placing a load balancer in front that does have a public IP address. And one reason people do this is the vanity URL configuration. This is a way to override the default domain name and Oracle provided certificate with your own domain name and your own certificate. You put a load balancer in front, and then you can use your own stuff. So that's a common scenario as well. And I wanted to point out, if you're configuring your load balancer, you have this type of architecture and you're configuring your load balancer. The guidance from the load balancer team is it should be load balancer that times you out, not your back end. It should be the front end thing that actually does the front end timeout. So they say when you're configuring your load balancer listener, its timeout should be about 10 minutes less than whatever your back end is. In our case, the back end's Autonomous Database. It's now 5 minutes or 300 seconds. So when you're configuring a load balancer listener, I just wanted to give you a tip here, kind of best practice here. And they write this in their UI. It's in the little help text in their UI that its timeout should be about 10 seconds less. So I set it 300 minus 10. I set my listener to 290 seconds in this case. And then the back end is 5 minutes or 300 seconds. Now, a word about long-running operations in Apex. Most of the time, as you've probably experienced, users of your applications, if they're experiencing an operation that takes more than about a minute for the page to finish and render, you're probably going to lose them. They'll probably abort. They'll refresh the page, they'll close the tab, they'll go to a new page. So in general, you don't want a lot of long-running operations, right? If it takes more than a minute, you've lost them. That is quite common. And if you have operations that are taking more than a minute, we do recommend that you go back and look at your SQL. Once in a while, you'll find that their SQL that's not optimal. It's not tuned. It's suboptimal SQL, and you can solve a long-running operation just by looking at your SQL and updating your SQL statement or your PL SQL script. So if you have long-running operations, go back and take a look at that. Or if you have something that is expected to be long-running, you know will be long-running, you can make that operation asynchronous. So let me explain what we mean by that. Going back to this upload a CSV example, you could make that asynchronous by uploading it first to OCI object storage, creating a DBMS scheduler job to load from object storage into a database table in the background, and also display a progress bar in Apex while this is all occurring. So that's a way to make it asynchronous. And fortunately, thanks to Karsten, we have a blog and a community post all about how to do this. I put the links on the slide there. So if you do have a exception case like this, go take a look at the blog post, and I think you'll find some helpful information there. But in general, you want to avoid long-running operations and keep your Apex pages to less than a minute if possible. Okay, we're coming up towards the end here. I wanted to end with just a couple other recent enhancements that we did over the last 9 months. You may have noticed with 22.2 last November, we made the availability of the GA download simultaneous with the upgrade of free autonomous databases in the cloud. So there used to be a delay of several weeks between the availability of the download and the upgrade in cloud. We actually did those on the same day back in November. So if you're running a free ADB database, you got it the same day the download became available. So that was maybe a subtle thing from the standpoint of an end user, a developer of Apex apps, but a big achievement for us from a DevOps standpoint, a cloud ops standpoint. So we're able to make these more simultaneous in the last upgrade. We also, I'm going to just cover these really quickly. We also, in the interest of parity between Apex running on autonomous database and Apex running on premises, we took a couple of these long-standing features that have been there in Apex on premises for a long time, and that were not yet enabled in the cloud, and we enabled them. So this gets us, much closer to complete parity to on-premises Apex. And the two features that were enabled were non-database developer accounts. So on-premises, you could set up your developer account, not your end user accounts, but your developer accounts, so they could be authenticated to third-party sources of identity over something like OAuth or OpenID Connect, LDAP. You can actually use LDAP, HTTP header. You can authenticate developers externally. That was not available with Autonomous Database in the cloud. The developer accounts always had to be database user accounts. And we've relaxed that now and enabled this feature so it looks more similar to what you get on premises. So you can now have developer accounts come from a third-party source over some of these common standards. We also took another long-standing feature that was there in the on-premise product, the ability for, you can configure Apex in a way that developers can come to you and provision their workspace and their schema self-service style without human intervention. So there's a way you can put Apex in that mode. And we also enabled that in the cloud as well. So much closer to complete parity now that we've enabled those two things too. So go take a look at those if they are of interest and you're running Apex on ADB. All right, I'm going to just zip through this really quickly. We have big plans for the next 12 months. We're of course going to take probably 2 major releases of Apex this calendar year. And we're going to try and make the upgrade even more simultaneous. So it's not just free and GA download that happen on the same day, but also paid autonomous databases happen on the same day. So everything happens on the same day. We're going to try and make that release much more or completely simultaneous. We want to give more users flexibility in that upgrade window and how they set the upgrade window. Keep an eye on that. Probably provide more notification events for how you can be notified about upgrade status and execution status of the upgrade. And there's a new billing metric, a second option for how you're billed, a new billing metric. This is available in ATP and ADW now in limited availability. And we're thinking about making this additional metric to choose from also available in our specialized Apex service. So keep an eye on that too. And I think we have some time for Q&A, Jason. I'm going to just leave this slide showing.
Okay.
This has some additional resources that you can go take a look at later.
Yeah, I think we can afford to spend a few minutes to go over on the hour because there's been so many good questions. We've answered over 35 questions now. A couple more are coming in. But yeah, if I could start with a couple questions to you, Todd. You mentioned enhancements coming soon to Apex on ADB that will provide more flexibility in setting the Apex upgrade window. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And a subtle but important point is, so when you're setting that upgrade window, you're changing it from 45 to 90 days. The database has to be in a running state when you make that change. And you also have to not be in the window already. You have to be outside of the window. So there's two requirements for when you make that change, and we want to relax that a little bit. So you can actually change from 45 to 90 days when you're already in the 45-day window. And you could make the change if the database isn't even running, it's stopped. So those are some things we're looking at going forward.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned email security standards like SPF and DKIM. What are those?
Okay, so I am not an email super, SME expert. There's a lot to it if you've ever delved into the internal workings of email systems. So I know a little bit about it. I know enough to be dangerous. And two of the problems you have with sending email is reputational damage. People who are spoofing your email address and eroding your reputation. And then another problem you have is with big free email services like Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, they have pretty sophisticated spam filtering these days, right? And they filter out a lot of spam by default. Over the years, they've gotten more sophisticated about that. So you may have problems with having your email successfully delivered to these inboxes and not labeled as spam in the first place. And SPF and DKIM attack those two problems, right? Prevent reputational damage from spoofing and help you guarantee that your email will be delivered even to these public services that do a lot of filtering, a lot of spam filtering, right? Help guarantee that your email will still be delivered there.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. I remember having all kinds of trouble with email systems in the past and the whole spamming thing in SPF, the sender policy framework. I mean, it's a learning curve and it's quite detailed. And the standards are beyond the control of any platform, let alone Apex or even Oracle for that matter. What was the previous timeout value for ADB with public IP address before it was synchronized to 5 minutes?
Okay, that's another good question, another subtle but important point. So for ADB with a private IP address, we increased the timeout. We more than doubled it from 2 minutes to 5 minutes. And I mentioned that we also synchronized to 5 minutes for ADB with a public IP address, so ADB in the public IP configuration. That one was actually a decrease. Previously, it was 15 minutes. So that one went, rather than 2 minutes up to 5 minutes, it went 15 minutes down to 5 minutes. And that was just something we had to do. There's standards that are enforced by our cloud team here at Oracle, security team, security standards, all kinds of standards. And it turns out in that particular configuration, we had just set it too high, and we were asked to go synchronize it and make it a more reasonable number. So we set both of them to 5 minutes.
Okay, great. And on to some other questions in the Q&A. Does a production application become offline during the upgrade?
For most of that 1 hour period while the upgrade is executing, things are fine, right? And I can't give you an exact number because it depends a little bit on the region you're running in, the specific pod that your instance is located on, how busy that region and that pod is right at that time. I can't give exact numbers, but typically the upgrade takes about an hour. And your Apex apps and your developer workspace used by developers is accessible and usable for most of that time. It's only the last couple of minutes where there's a brief period where Apex goes into a read-only mode. Your developers can't make changes, but the apps are still live. And at the very end, when it's finalized for about 3 minutes, Apex actually becomes unavailable. So the hit that you take is typically about 3 minutes. That's the unavailability period. And it's 3 minutes twice per calendar year. So we think it's pretty reasonable at this point. We're always looking for ways to optimize that further, but pretty reasonable at this point.
No, that
And
makes
your
sense.
apps and your developers can keep running almost all the time.
All right, great. So another question here is, when choosing an always free instance, what would be the business case for choosing an Apex service instance over a standard ATP instance, as they're both always free, but the Apex service lacks DB connectivity?
Yeah, that's a great question. The main reason is if you anticipate upgrading that free instance to a full production scalable paid instance at some point, right? So that's common where you start with something free, you do some development on it, and then you realize, oh, I'm ready. I'm going to deploy this. I'm going to make this live, right? You want to make it a full scalable instance where you can add more CPUs, add more storage. You get an Oracle support contract on a paid instance, right? You can file SRs and get help. You get an SLA, you actually have an SLA when you're in a paid instance. So it's once in a while you do actually go from dev to a real instance. And that Apex service is much lower cost. So when you go from dev to real, you're paying a lower price. We do turn some things off, as you pointed out, in exchange for that lower price. But if it's narrowly focused on Apex apps and REST endpoints, you can go with something like Apex service and pay less. If you absolutely must have SQLnet connectivity, you're connecting from clients, you're connecting from programming language drivers that connect to the database, or you want to do your development in SQL Developer Desktop, not SQL Developer Web, right? So that's would be overseen. In that case, you would want the full service.
All right, makes sense. Thank you for the answers. So just so everyone knows, we're going to take these Q&A question and answers out of the Zoom here and create a link in the office hours session on Ask Tom, so that you're going to actually be able to reference these question and answers at a later time. And Todd, you had a bunch of links in your presentation, so we're going to want to gather those links and put them also along with that. So Monica's offered to help with that, just to make sure that everybody has these links and extra information available after the session. So in any case, we've answered all the questions, over 40 at this time. We appreciate everyone being on the call today and learning a little bit more about Apex on OCI and all the new enhancements coming. Thank you so much to our presenter, Todd, for his time put together, in putting together this whole presentation and all this information, as well as delivering it. I mean, you did a great job, Todd. Thank you so much. And to everyone that's on the call that's able to answer these questions, thank you for your time. Beyond that, we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Apex office hours. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. And remember, if you're going to enjoy St. Patrick's Day, be safe. Thanks.